This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
This episode is brought to you by La Quinta by Wyndham. Your work can take you all over the place, like Texas. You've never been, but it's going to be great because you're staying at La Quinta by Wyndham. Their free Bright Side breakfast will give you energy for the day ahead. And after, you can unwind using their free high-speed Wi-Fi. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. Book your stay today at lq.com.
The entrepreneur is not progressing, they're dying, either internally or financially. Right. So the whole concept here, we have to figure out how to get healthy without slowing down.
Hey, welcome back to Millionaire University. I'm Erik Fisher. We have got a great class for you. Coming up, I am talking with Anthony Witt. He's a serial entrepreneur, a coach, a counselor, a therapist. He's a co-founder of Witt House Counseling. He brings all of that experience to navigating the complexities of the entrepreneurial life, where he gives guidance to entrepreneurs seeking to harmonize the demands of their entrepreneurial endeavors with the rhythms of life. In other words, business and life, work-life balance. So that's what we're digging into in this class, talking about the correlation between mental health and entrepreneurial success, interconnectedness of personal and professional life, identity issues that often entrepreneurs deal with when their self-worth is tied to the thing that they are creating. Sound familiar? If so, you're in for a treat. Put your hands together for Anthony Witt. All right, Anthony, it is awesome to have you here with me. Of course, you've been in a mastermind with me and we've been friends for years, but I've always admired the work that you do. You talk and work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, creators, etc., who, let's face it, are humans too, right? So they need help. They need emotional help. They need psychological help. And who better to know that than you? So
yeah, it's we are all human, despite the work that we do, sometimes making it look like we're not.
Yeah, sometimes our coworkers are the people that we're the boss to, especially if we're the boss to ourselves. They're like, man, that jerk today, and it's us talking in the mirror. Let's talk a little bit about Witt House and your counseling. You've been doing this for a long time. You work with your wife, but you really have worked with a lot of, again, entrepreneurs and business owners.
Yeah. So it's probably been between 12 and 15 years. There's a progression, though, to where I am now. And that progression, I say this to clients all the time. I said, my progression to what I do today influences everything I do. But I went from being an employee, being an entrepreneur, to being a consultant, to being a coach, to being a therapist. So people will say, well, what do you do? I'll say, well, yes, I do it all. Right. So I backfill that. And my journey, was realizing, people can't see what they can't see. And so I started helping people see what they can't see. And then I realized, they need like ongoing coaching or even systems to help implement, put them in accountability, all these things. And then I kept going back to my wife, who, like you said, has been a therapist for nearly 20 years now. I would be like, hey, I got this person that's struggling with this. How do I help them with this? And then she'd give me some tactics or some ideas or some worksheets or whatever it might be. And I'd take it back and learn it and give it to my clients. And eventually I was like, well, maybe I should go back. And so that's how I ended up in therapy, or as a therapist, if you will. But it's that application of all of those kind of individual systems all smashed into one little system together, which is kind of the unique thing that we do here, is kind of all of that together, realizing that, wait a minute, there's a play here between mental health, health in general, and systems and processes and business growth and entrepreneurship and finances and all that. There's a huge gap because what happens, I have coaches. I hire coaches. My coaches say, you're dealing with anxiety, you should go see a therapist. The best coaches that I know say that. And in some respects, they should say that. But then the best therapists I know, they have no clue. Well, what do you mean you're struggling with your employees? Well, let's talk about their personality. Well, it might be applicable, but they don't understand. I'm struggling with my employee because my cash flow is off. What? therapists have no idea. You should probably go hire a consultant. So there's a little window there that we kind of found ourselves in.
You know me, we've known each other for a long time. You know, I love Venn diagrams. And that's kind of the cool thing here is that I see you crossing over a bunch of different circles. Let's see if let's count how many we can come up with real quick. I know.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we've got the entrepreneur, the person who knows the ins and outs of like, okay, here are all the components of running a business. So that's one of the circles. Another would be your home life, which we're definitely going to dive into. So let's call that another circle. And then the third one would be, I think, your interior life, you know, your maturity level, your emotions, in other words, the soul of the person. So it's not just the business side of them or the family side of them. It's the inner workings of them. And anybody that knows anything knows, really, we are all those hats. We are all those people, those expectations that we've said yes to or agreed to, right?
Yeah. So let me offer up actually 4 circles. If I may.
Nice. Add another one.
Well, I'm gonna slightly change some of the ones that you have, and I'm gonna throw some in there. Let me.
All right, you're the expert.
Just throw the circles out there, and here's the circles, and I'm not even going to explain them right off the bat. But so we have biological, our physical body. We have psychological, which is kind of that inner, our brain, the way we think, the inside of our thought patterns, all of that. Then we have relational, relationships we're in, we have to be in, we're actually in. Then we have spiritual, which we can define that later too. But then we have professional, which would be the entrepreneur one almost, or the career one. And those 5 dimensions, and it's just a framework. We can pick the words you just used. We can pick a different set of framework. That's the framework that I typically use. And if I can be like, a little bit of a secret, it's just because that's what I learned under. I adapted it to some of my other learnings and said, oh, wait a minute. These 5 circles seem to be really helping people. So I'm going to use these 5 circles, but they are the different dimensions or circles, like you said, of who we are. Entrepreneurs typically do 1 or 2 of those circles. Psychological does 1 or 2 of those circles. Maybe your spiritual mentor does 1 or 2 of those circles. Well, then we have way too many people we're grabbing. So I'm working on saying, well, we should probably work on all those circles in some respects.
And so that's what I'm getting at here is I think that you're in a unique position because you can talk to all 4 circles at once, essentially. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, people who want to create or already have created businesses, that professional circle has this huge, it's like if you're creating a PowerPoint and you're creating circles on your slides and you've got the option to see how thick the outline of the circle is, that one, that circle has a thicker, more robust, in other words, more prioritized, more attention given to that circle over really the other 3 that exist.
Oh, yes.
At least that's what you've said you've found to me when we've compared notes of like, entrepreneurs are not all crazy, right? No, it comes down to like, it's their priorities and the way they prioritize their life, like they aren't considering everything. And then it mucks up their business.
I may have said that, but I think my answer to entrepreneurs aren't all crazy, are they? Yeah, they're pretty much all crazy. It's just how they're crazy. Which direction are they crazy? That's what I see a lot of times. And I was actually kind of working through some of this for somebody. I see that they pour into that circle. Let's call that the entrepreneur circle. And just for clarity's sakes, here's how I define entrepreneur. I think it's a misused word, but here's how I define it because I think it works this way. I define entrepreneur as anybody who's directing their own path, whether they are an owner, a boss, or they've created and designed new things, right? Traditionally, that's what an entrepreneur is. But I say if you're trailing your own path, whether it's in an industry that already exists or you're creating a new industry, you're an entrepreneur. Because typically, this Western society, America, we live in, non-entrepreneurs are employees. We're talking about the people that are not employees.
Gotcha.
They're blazing their own path. Again, I don't like digital marketing. It exists. But if you create your own digital marketing firm, in my book, you're an entrepreneur because you're doing your own thing. Those people tend to look at their problems as work problems, or let's use the word entrepreneurial problems. And those people, it sounds like I'm like attacking them. I'm absolutely not. But those individuals tend to look at their life focuses, their life is, but those people, you can't separate, you can't remove them from their business or their business from them. That's a ripping apart of the soul of the person. It just doesn't work, especially if they've been doing it and they're in their business for a long time, for 5-10 years. When you do that, you totally rip the person apart. So everything they do has some influence on their work, but all of their work has some influence on their life, which that's the piece that most people don't think about. That, oh, wait a minute, I'm not happy with our P&L today for whatever reason. And I'm angry at my sales rep if I'm big enough to have a sales rep. And he's fighting back with me. And I go home and I'm mad at my kids and my wife. What problem is that? Is that a marital problem and a family problem? Or is that a business problem? That's a all of you problem, like a full life problem. And that's why I like these dimensions or circles, however you want to define them. I call them areas of health, actually. But these dimensions or these areas, they all overlap.
Yeah, we're not as siloed as we think we can. We can't compartmentalize as much as we think we can or should.
Yeah, so I would even argue, and we don't have time for this today probably, but I would argue that compartmentalizing doesn't exist. It's just focus. We focus on something. And maybe that's just a play on terms, right?
I think you're saying compartmentalizing doesn't exist. Instead, what we do is we use even more energy to try and ignore how one of the circles is affecting the others, in other words. Yeah.
Or to use compartmentalization, we attempt to create compartmentalization. But here's the situation. I like to use this example. Those areas, and those are just the areas we picked for the day. Like I said, it's a framework. It's one of the frameworks I use. Those are all just corners of the same room.
Yes.
And everything in one corner bleeds over to the other corners. Like if we were, and maybe we'll get into this in a little bit, if we were to define all of those areas, give you definition on each one of them, say where you at on these ones. As soon as you started to answer the question, where you're at on this one, I'm like, well, okay, but that's kind of this other one. So even in the definitions, there's some ambiguity. Why? Because it's you. It's the one person. It's the one room, so to speak, of you. So a healthy person, but I like to use the word healthy because it's something we're moving towards. It's not something that we always are or that we ever will be potentially. Like we're moving towards this, and I can move towards this and be positive and not be there. So not be satisfied and still be pushing forward, which is an entrepreneurial actually thought pattern actually. Even we can be healthier in these areas and start moving in individual areas because they all affect all their areas.
So in talking with you, though, I know that there are typically some repeated things that you're covering with people as they come to talk to you. And you're addressing these four circles, the four corners of the room. And I would love to hit some of those. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them that are probably just the most common ones. And, obviously they're coming to you because they're crushing business, but the rest of their life isn't working out as well as it should. And again, it's not just a business problem or just a this or just a that problem. It's somewhere along the line, you've got disconnect, you've got lack of clarity, you've got unprioritized, you've got too many priorities, in other words, and none of them are really prioritized. And so, but what are some of those things? Let's start with what's the first one? I think it probably has to do with like your home life, probably. What does that look like to you when you talk to people with business owners? What do they describe their problem as? And how do you start to talk to them about that and help them identify what they aren't seeing about themselves?
Yeah, I was quite literally talking to my wife. My wife and I were sitting waiting to pick up a kid yesterday. And we were talking about this and like, they can't see it. She's like, well, what can't they see? And I just gave an example. She's like, how can they not see that? It was just like a personal example for actually a client, quite literally a client. Number one is they're way too close. The other thing that happens is the dysfunction that happens inside of those other areas, they silo, right? So we talked about compartmentalizing and how it's not really possible, but what they do is they wall it off because it hurts. When it comes up at first, it hurts, right? Let's just take a relational or family problems or marital problems, right? It hurts. It hurts really bad at first. Then it happens again, and it hurts a little bit less, just a little bit less. And eventually it gets to the point where whatever, I don't even recognize that thing exists, right? That's a callousing of whatever that was. And I can be vague on purpose because for most people, it's just different, right? It's totally different. Maybe it's Yeah, we don't even need to specify, right? It's different things. And eventually get to the point where they're like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't even know what the problem is here. I just know that it's not right and it's not working. There's a problem. So this is, again, not a direct answer to your question, but one of the things I do with these 5 areas is I quite literally make them answer the question and say, listen, this is a little survey I do with pretty much every single client. I say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you in each one of these areas? 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And they'll be like, well, how do I rate it? I say, it doesn't matter because it's your scale. It makes no difference whatsoever. You're the one rating it. It is uncanny how when I have people rate these individual areas, and it doesn't matter if you're a 4 and a 5 type of a person when you rate, or you're a 1 and a 2 type of person when you rate. We get to one of these areas, and 1 or 2 of these areas is really low every single time in comparison to the other areas. And so I quite literally say, oh, so you're not really sure what your problem is. We're trying to figure it out. It sounds like you have some dysfunction here and you have some dysfunction over here because you're describing you're fighting with your wife, but you also have some of these thought patterns and maybe you really don't know why you're here, what you're doing. You have the lowest score in your relational health and your psychological health. Okay, we're going to start right there. We're just going to start right there. What does it mean to start right there? It means you have all these other problems and you're trying to figure out where the problems are coming from. Because quite often what people do is they come in and it's like, I'm stuck and I don't know what the problem is. So all we do is just give this big ball of wax and we're just going to stretch it out just a little bit and we're going to identify. So back to your question, which is, what do they come up with? They don't slow down to identify. That's what entrepreneurs do a lot of. Whether you are, and I've got to find a nicer way to say this, whether you are the entrepreneur that is a hyper-focused individual or whether you're the ADHD entrepreneur, either one of those, they do not slow. That's where I gotta find a better set of using a psychological definition for people. The squirrels and the hyper-focused entrepreneurs, because that's the pendulum that I see all the time. You're quite often one or the other, right? Because both of those individuals are bad at having bosses is one of the big reasons, but they don't slow down to identify because their world doesn't allow them to slow down to identify. The squirrel can't slow down. The hyper-focused person also can't slow down for different reasons, but they can't slow down. So they don't slow down to identify at all. There was an organization not too long ago, I kind of researched them a little bit, they kind of imploded. And their founder said this. He said, you're either going to get on our bus or you're going to get off our bus and we're going to run you over. Well, that's like a negative play on Jim Collins' whole concept, good to great, which is right people, right seat on the bus. That concept is what entrepreneurs do all the time. Now, it might be a person they kick off the bus and they just run you over. Well, they got a pile of people or they got a pile of things that really need to be identified. They keep hitting the same problems because here's the deal. We've all got problems. If we can just start with that premise, I use the word broken. We're all broken. We've all got some brokenness. If we don't spend some time identifying what some of that is, we just try to avoid it. Well, if I try to avoid those things and I spend my time avoiding things, guess what? I'm probably not being the most efficient person I can. I'm probably not running my business the best that I can, which also means that my family life and my relationships are not good as well because I'm trying to avoid something.
We'll be back right after a word from our sponsors. More and more entrepreneurs and investors are discovering the awesome franchise opportunities that exist across a variety of industries. Franchising can simply be the better path, and interest in franchising is at an all-time high. Lucky for you, John Austenson, founder of Fran Bridge Consulting and a past Millionaire University guest, is here to help you explore the premier franchise opportunities today. John and his Franbridge Consulting team are part of the largest franchise brokerage in the U.S. and have vetted the market thoroughly. Franbridge is hands down the premier source for the best opportunities in the franchise world, including both active and passive opportunities. From tiny homes to youth soccer to industrial hoses to pets, senior care to mental health, and more. John has served as an Inc. 500 franchisor and is a multi-brand franchisee himself. And he does more placements than anyone else in the country. Sign up for a free consultation call with John today or get a free copy of his book, Non-Food Franchising, at franbridgeconsulting.com. That's franbridgeconsulting.com. Available in the U.S. and Canada.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. If you run an e-commerce business, you know how much work it takes to produce something great while dealing with complicated shipping issues. That's why over 130,000 companies have turned to ShipStation, an innovative tool that allows you to focus less on shipping and more on building your brand. With ShipStation, you can manage orders, label printing, reporting, and customer service on one easy-to-use dashboard. You'll reduce warehouse costs with reliable enterprise solutions and save thousands on shipping costs with discounts up to 89% off. Plus, you can effortlessly import orders from everywhere you sell online. So, turn your shipping challenges into opportunities for growth. Go to ShipStation.com and use code POD to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, code POD.
We're all trying to avoid something quite often. And what it is the pain most often. I don't want that. God forbid that you were abused as a child, or that's kind of a big one, right? Or you were bullied or something happened. You're now doing things inside of your business to avoid that. Some of it's, I'm never going to stop because I'm going to go to the top because I'm going to prove it to you. Well, guess what happens? Those other areas are horrible. I'm not going to slow down to eat healthy, because if I slow down and eat healthy, make a salad to take to work as opposed to stopping at McDonald's across the street, I'm not going to be able to get my stuff done, and I'm not going to be at the top of the, XYZ. Well, now your biological health is horrible. The first thing I say to people that come in that have anxiety and depression in my office, the very first thing I ask them, how's your exercise, nutrition, sleep, and diet? And you might be like, well, why would you ask that? Because that affects your brain so drastically in your ability to function. Well, how do you think it's affecting your career and your work? It's also affecting that. Now, I don't claim to be a nutritionist, done a lot of stuff in the nutritional space, but my point is it affects. And so slowing down to identify is one of the biggest things. Come all the way back to your question, is that they don't slow down to identify. And a lot of times it's because it's painful.
I imagine that this is kind of the overarching, it goes back to they don't know what they don't know about themselves or their situation. It's so then they come to you and they're like, and you ask them, to do this, the rankings, the ratings, et cetera. And I'm sure stuff surfaces there too. Like, for example, family life, because they don't know how to do family because they're so used to people being business partners or employees or transactional. People are transactions, not relationships.
Yep. So identify is one of the big ones. The other one is that I kind of hit on it is the weakness concept. They actually don't know what their weaknesses are. Now, I believe a good entrepreneur, he or she knows what their weaknesses are and they know what their strengths are. Most entrepreneurs spend their time avoiding their weakness and they push into avoiding them, right? If you know what your weakness is, guess what? You can figure out what your superpower is. If you know what your superpower is, you can figure out what your kryptonite is. And guess what? Your superpower is better than mine. You want to know why? Because of your weaknesses. You have strengths that I cannot have simply based on your weaknesses. Why? Because, and this is the psychological side of it, is you have made changes and you have adapted in ways that I can't because I haven't experienced whatever it is you experienced, which actually makes you good at what you do, at least good at what your superpower is. So if you know what your weakness is, you can be like, oh, what's the flip of that? And it's not always a direct flip, but what's the flip of that? Oh, that's my strength. No wonder I get fired up when I do that. And I love when I do that. And I love when I get to do that, whatever it is. Like for some people, it's like finishing stuff. Dude, Anthony Witt, I hate finishing stuff. I am so bad at finishing stuff. Like coming on this podcast, like, oh, get this thing over to me for whatever. Oh my goodness, I got to finish that thing. I got to get that thing. Like I'm horrible at finishing. I'm a fantastic starter. Now, we don't need to go into why I am that way, but if I know that, well, I can bring other people around me and or build systems and processes, if you will, because I know that. But most entrepreneurs, back to your kind of, the self-sabotage type question, they spend their time avoiding the weakness.
Because they don't know it. They also don't know it, but they also don't want to even get near it. They don't want to touch it. They don't see it as a correlation to a superpower. I love it. What are some of the other self-sabotaging things you see people do when they come in to you?
There's several more. One of them is like the anxiety, depression concept, right? So let's talk mental health for a second. Whether it's clinical or not is somewhat irrelevant. Now, it's relevant if, hey, we need to move towards medication, but the quote unquote counselor approach is pretty much the same whether I can nail it down as a clinical diagnosis or not, or whether you just have some symptomology associated with that. Entrepreneurs don't take the time to work through it. They push into it. And so their success a lot of times is because of it, which you can be like, oh, well, so it's good that they have problems.
So explain that a minute. Like, so their success is because of it. That almost makes it seem like it's a good thing that they have it. It's like it drives them.
I would argue a lot of times it does, but what happens is they get to the top and they crumble. And the top is, we're not going to define the top today, but what drives them is they cannot stop. They don't have the ability to stop, because if they stop, then what do? They have to live into their panic, or they live into their anxiety, or they have to deal with it. But if I keep going, if I just keep not stopping, it's the adrenaline pump, right? If I can keep that adrenaline going, and sometimes it's actually adrenaline, sometimes it's not, depending on this, the scenario situation. If I can keep that going, I can avoid it, that discomfort. So that's part of it. Entrepreneurs also flip. So they flip from, and all people do this, right? The misnomer is depression, anxiety. I'm talking specifically with those. That's this different sides of the same coin, right? And so we'll flip. We'll flip on a dime, no puns here, but like it'll flip. And so I'm spiraling down towards depression. Like there's no word. I can't do this. Like entrepreneurial words, like I can't pay my bills. I'm not going to pay my employee. I'm not going to be able to pay that vendor. I can't get that job done. Right? It's depression, and then it'll flip to anxiety. But those things drive a lot of times because they put their identity in that one part of their life, that one little thing. Well, if that's not there, they're in trouble, right? I'm okay with some identity in what you do, but it can't be your only identity because it will go away. You sell your business crashes, whatever it is, you're not useful later on because of this. The other thing that happens all the time is they don't have anybody to talk to and they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. Let's say you're an entrepreneur, you have it doesn't matter what the revenue is, but you're a business, you have a business, you started the business. So here's some of the people in those individuals' lives. So they have a family or spouse, maybe they may remember they're not, but let's just for a second say they do. That family, spouse, let's say they actually have a family, kids, I separate kids. They might have a partner. They might have board members. Even small companies sometimes have board members. They might have investors. A lot of them have investors, right? They might have an employee or two. I could go through each one of those individually. For the sake of time, I don't think I'm going to. But each one of those individually, you can't talk to those people for certain reasons, right? I can't talk to my spouse and my kids about the fact that I want to quit my job because I'm so anxious or I'm super depressed. Because why? They've actually learned to rely on whatever it is that I'm giving them, right? Assuming that there's cash flow here, which is a whole different topic for a different podcast for sure. My partners, same thing. They rely on me to do whatever part of maybe I'm the finance guy, maybe I'm the operations guy, maybe I'm the sales guy. They rely on me to do that. I can't go talk to them about how this is not working. It's not functional. Same thing with the board members, even more so with investors. Wait, I give you money, you're going to quit. Like you don't have anybody to talk to. Employees as well. They're relying on you, even if they're, part-time type employees. Well, I'm relying on you for my income. I can't go to you either. So entrepreneurs, it takes them an incredibly long time to realize, wait a minute, I'm isolated. I'm in a silo. I'm extremely siloed. And a lot of times they can't even recognize. They don't even get to that point. They just kind of circle around in some different circles, kind of try to talk to this person, kind of try to talk to that person. But if we go all the way back to some of the beginning part of our conversation, we talk about some of the areas of health. Well, if I have really good relational health and I have really good psychological health, I've probably developed the understanding of how to talk to people. I know a little bit about myself. And so when there's a problem, I can say, hey, Erik, partner Erik, like this is what's really going on here. And when I see and recognize, oh, you're nervous about what I'm talking about, I can have a conversation about your nervousness because I understand, not because I'm a trained psychologist or something like that, but because I have good psychological health about myself and I have good relational health. And so I can pay attention to you because I've spent time on it. Well, we typically don't do that because if we slow down, nothing's happening. If nothing's happening, we're not progressing. If we're not progressing, I would word it this way a lot of times, the entrepreneur is not progressing, they're dying, either internally or financially, right? So the whole concept here, which we really haven't addressed at all, is we have to figure out how to get healthy without slowing down.
Because that's not an option to entrepreneurs. It's not an option unless they're in a point where they can shut down or sell off the current business because they know they've got something else in mind and they can then take that gap time. But that's not for everyone. And that's not everyone's option at any given time.
Well, you almost have to separate, and I don't like to segment at all. You almost have to segment kind of that startup, and maybe there's a revenue segment, you're at this, and it's not even revenue. I think it's actual income, like bottom line income, bottom line profit. You're in that X amount of profit, and then because then things change as far as structure goes. But what doesn't change unless you work on it is your habits. And if my habit is to burn, like I said, to burn people, systems, processes, because they create discomfort for me, you're going to continue to do that unless you slow down. Whether you're at a profit number of, let's say your bottom line profit is in the 6 or 7 figures, you're still going to continue to do that unless you slow down and pay attention to it. And so, crazy as it sounds, you got to be able to figure out how to slow down and speed up.
All right. So somebody comes to you and you've had this conversation with them. They're tracking, they understand it, but they don't know what like the next steps are. Obviously, they didn't have anybody to talk to, but they've got you, or they've got somebody else. They've got somebody at least, which is a great first step, but they know they can't slow down. So they've got to figure out a way to offload. Maybe it's delegate. Maybe it's, hey, partner, I need you to do this for a little, for a month or so while I fix this other thing, whether it's a personal thing, whether it's a different business thing. What are some of the different options that you give?
So here's my approach. And I can talk about the circles a little bit more in a minute, but my approach is this. And I say this all the time. I've got transcripts from an unreal amount of universities and schools because I didn't want to know what I wanted to be when I grew up till way long into it. I've got certifications and certificates, and like I could line the wall with dumb stuff that I've got. You want to learn this system? I can do it because I've got a certification in it. You want to take this assessment? Great. Here's the thing. We're super saturated with all of this stuff. And the next book, I got a book laying behind me, pick up the book. That's the book. Let's do this thing, right? That's not the right answer. And we try to just shove ourselves into something really quick. My approach, and what I think the right approach is to actually slow down enough to figure out what is the right approach for you. That's where I'll come back to my circles, right? So if you come to me, I believe the right approach is this, or I'm going to be a little bit looser with that. I'm going to say the framework that I use that is successful is this, because I think there's more than one right approach here. I really do. We go through the areas essentially, and we kind of stumble on those right at the beginning, but it's really what I do. I'm going to go through the areas. We're going to figure out where you're at on the areas, and we're going to start focusing on one of those areas. And we're going to start pulling on that area a little bit. Like I said, I use the weight one or biological, right? I'm not eating healthy. I just said not eating healthy. I didn't even say weight the first time, but let's say it's weight. Let's say, and it's something I got to focus on all the time, personally. We figure out where your dysfunction is, where maybe your strongest dysfunction is. We just start focusing right there. We start pulling on that. You say, well, but my problem is my business. My cash flow is my problem. Okay, we might have to put out a fire to be able to then focus on what really needs to be focused on. But the truth is, if you're having problems, like I said, let's say that your salesperson comes with the fantastic ideas and it requires you to lean into something that you really don't want to lean into because you have whatever it is, maladaptive thoughts, negative thought patterns, trauma. I don't really care what it is at the moment. And you don't do it. What is that? Is that a business problem or is that a personal problem? Well, if we know where you're at in your different areas, we can start working on those areas, start pulling on those areas. So if we can get you healthier as a person, if we can get the way you think about yourself healthier as a person, we get the way that you do in relationships better as a person, if we can get your identity better. So we didn't hit this yet, but here's how I describe spiritual. Why you're here and what you're doing to fulfill why you're here. That's identity. You get to decide that. Well, if you're working in a business that makes widgets that you think are the dumbest thing ever, or that you think are taking advantage of other people, you have a really poor, sad, bad identity. We need to start there. So we figure out where to start and we just start pulling on that. It's not the solution to everything. It's not a fine line that says, put them into this system and it's going to work. We start there and then we figure out, oh, you know what? We fixed a couple things. We worked on a couple things. You know what? This system over here would be the right system. Instead of shoving you into a system that might not be right for you or that you're not ready for. That's one of the biggest things. I'll see people say, hey, I want to do this business system or this process or the one. I'm saying, great, I've got experience in that. My MBA work is in finance. And so, yeah, I can help you with that. Do we know if that's the right move for you? For you, not even the business, because we're talking about owners mostly here, right? For you, well, I don't know. It works for Jimmy over there. Yeah, but Jimmy's in a different place than you are. And it doesn't matter if Jimmy's below you or above you. He's in a different place than you are. So let's figure out first if it's even the right thing for you to do. Well, we do that by first figuring out where you're at. So that's what I find is people, if they come and they don't know what the problem is. And so, okay, let's figure out a problem. We don't need to figure out. So many people are trying to figure out what's the silver bullet problem that I'm going to solve. No, let's just start solving a problem. The best problem is maybe the one that's at the bottom. Sometimes the one at the bottom is so painful, they can't deal with it. I got a client, came in the other day. His biggest problem is relational. Him and his wife are not in a good place. We can't start there because it's so painful. So we're actually starting on a business thing. And as we do the business thing, well, what am I doing as the counselor, as the coach, as the consultant? I'm realizing, okay, you see how we changed that relationship right there, that business relationship? Okay, let's just take that tool, that tactic we learned and we applied. Let's move it over here to the relational one with your spouse. I literally just yesterday, I did that. I was like, oh, hey, look, what about we just kind of bring that over here? He's like, oh my goodness, I never even thought about that. It totally clicked. Well, the one was too painful. We do need to move back towards it, but we did that by working on this over here. It's that big ball, and we're just going to pull on it a little bit. We're going to see how I love when I pull on the thing, nothing happens, and then I pull again on another piece, and like things get fixed. That's an exaggeration, but like, why? Because that was the right piece to pull on. But we couldn't pull on the first one or the second one until we fixed that little tiny one at the bottom.
Feels like you're playing Jenga or something where you got to pull
Oh, it is.
feet, right?
It very much is. And so then the question becomes, how do you describe that to somebody that's not a client yet?
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man. I just know that in online circles and in the circles that we move, as well as people we've met, people we've interviewed or been interviewed by, this is stuff that we don't talk about enough. And I thought this is a great place to talk about that. This is a Psych 101 and business Psych 101 in a way for Millionaire University to bring this awareness to business owners who don't even have this on their radar, but they have maybe a sneaking suspicion, maybe subconsciously.
Yeah. So not everybody needs to go hire a therapist. I'm a therapist, and I just said, no, not everybody needs to go hire a therapist. Some people do. Some people need more of a coach type person in their life. But it's the realization that, wait a minute, I probably have dysfunction. And that's a fun counselor word I use all the time. Like you have, that's like my kind of, we're all broken. We've all got issues and problems. Okay. That doesn't mean I need to go to a therapist for the rest of my life, or that I have to go into deep trauma-based recovery therapy or something like that, or whatever it is. But it is that, wait a minute, this is going to affect what I do in my work. Give me an entrepreneur, and I'll give you a problem that's not associated with their business. It's not because I'm magical. It's because, again, we go back to the room. It's all in one room. We're not in multiple rooms. We don't get to leave our family room, our relation room, our psychological room, our biological. We don't get to leave those rooms to then go to work and then come back. Matter of fact, the people that do that are the hardest clients to work with, because they're quite literally leaving. They've got so many walls. Like I said, you can't really compartmentalize. It's not really a thing. They put so many up. We just got to work extremely hard to start tearing down walls, one little brick at a time.
I think this right here, this conversation is a good first brick in tearing some of those misconceptions, or, breaking the wall down so they can peek outside and say, wait a second, I didn't realize that I was stuck in misperceptions of who I am and what I am and how I do it and all of that. So Anthony, I'm really thankful for you to come and even just share your tip of the iceberg perspective here. There's so much more that people can move on and do. I'd love to have people check out more of what you're doing. I know you've got lots of great stuff going on. Where can we have people go to check out more of what you're working on?
Yeah. So, we have the counseling agency, of course, which is Witthouse, Witthouse.com. We just decided to slam our last name into the agency, but Witthouse.com. But you can also check me out at anthonywitt.com. I've got some stuff there, some tools there, even my, what I call my health guide, which is the framework that we talked about.
Perfect.
The 5 circles, kind of some areas. If you figure out where you're at on each one of those 5 circles, I don't call them circles, but those 5 areas, and you rate yourself. And from that rating, you can determine, okay, I need to work on this. Great. So that's where you can find me, where I'm at.
Perfect. Awesome. Anthony, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and your expertise.
I appreciate it, man. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, man. I don't know about you, but that is just stuff you need to hear, right? Anthony does such a great job. I've known him for a very long time, and he is real. He is down to earth, and he will walk you through that process. That is his specialty. And I just knew this is something that even if you're not working with Anthony, you're working with somebody else, a coach, a counselor, a therapist, a friend, a mastermind, that you would be benefiting from leaping back into something like that or finding somebody like that that immediately to help you, because no, not all entrepreneurs are crazy, but dang, do we have issues. And so I want to leave you with that note that your biological, psychological, relational, spiritual, professional dimensions, those are all part of you. And when any one of those is out of whack, oftentimes more than one, it can take outside help and, first and foremost, self-awareness to course correct and start healing. I really hope that you take this, what I'm calling kind of psych entrepreneurial 101 class here, and that it helped you with your self-awareness for your situation, and that you take that nudge. If you don't already have somebody in your life that can speak into these issues, find someone. Go grab the free resources in the show notes that Anthony's offering as well. Use those with yourself, someone else, whatever, but don't wait. And with that in mind, thank you for listening. Class dismissed.